Welcome to In a Nutshell, the podcast dedicated to all things agricultural consulting. I'm Dylan Brush here with soil genius and ag consultant Bill Brush, and we're delighted to accompany you on this journey where we break down the different aspects of agricultural consulting. In each episode, we'll dive into the realm of agriculture through the eyes of Bill Brush, where consultants like Bill play a vital role in empowering farmers, agribusiness, and agricultural organizations. If you're passionate about agriculture, problem solving, and enjoy a little bit of detective work, this podcast is tailor-made for you.
Hi, this is Bill Brush, and welcome back to In a Nutshell. Today's topic is going to be about a lot of things that kind of upset me when I hear about them, and it's somewhat along that vein of misinformation that it has some truth to it, but not all truth. So, and I read a lot of articles. Mostly they're trying to sell you something, or it's the newest, latest, greatest thing. Just use it and everything will be perfect from now on, you know? And there's also new farming systems that have been around forever, but now we give them a new label and it comes out similar to those other things. We've had organic, and it's kind of hangs around for a long time because it's accepted by the public. And there's biodynamic, and there's sustainability, or a sustainable way to grow a crop. And then the current buzzword is regenerative ag. It's hot in a lot of the literatures and what people do, I said. But when you look at what you read, and I'll tell you some things to look out for. Always worry if the intent of all this stuff that they're telling you is intended to sell you something. Now you have to look into those products and say, were they really tested? How were they tested? Was it really done by a reputable testing firm, one that does it for a living, that takes products in and actually shows the positive or negative or no effect that they find in their test? Or is it just something we put on some crop and anecdotally it worked? And look at that, it was wonderful. You should use it too. That kind of stuff. If it hasn't been run through somebody's system of lab and testing, and not just the person who's trying to sell it, then we have to look at it with kind of a little bit of a quizzical look that maybe, just maybe, it's not as good as you're telling me. The second thing I'd always worry about if someone says, just do what you're doing, but add this. It's all you have to do. Like that's the only thing that's making you from the greatest crop you've ever had to the crop that you're currently growing. And so a lot of times, if you have that one time, and it's very rare, and it would take a good agronomist to be able to see that, you have a deficiency for a particular nutrient that's very, very visible, and you go and attack that, and you'll see remarkable results. Those things happen. But for someone that's telling you a product works that way, that's never seen your field, not looking at your crops, that would say that would work, probably not. Just be very, very skeptical. The next thing is, what we have been doing is all wrong. Throw it in the garbage. None of it works, okay? Well, there's a lot of things in ag that remain the same. Getting soils balanced so that they have the proper soil structure. What I mean by that is have the proper amount of air and water balance with the proper amount of mineralization. And if you do, you have an air-rich soil that drains properly and gives you a place for the microbiology to thrive in. This was a lot of the work that Dr. William Albrecht did back at the University of Missouri at Columbia. And it basically says if we will get the soil structure right, create the right environment so that microbes will thrive, our fertilizers work better, water's more effective, we get everything we need to get into the plant. We not only have the best yields, but we also have better quality. It's better, a positive value to the environment. Everything works better when we do it that wrong. So we haven't done everything all wrong, or we would have starved to death long ago, but we have been doing some things wrong. And some of it is if something works, then we just keep putting it on until it doesn't work anymore. It's a thing that we've done in farming for lots of years. If some's good, more's a lot better. Instead of trying to strike that perfect balance. The other thing I hear all the time, chemical fertilizer is bad. Okay. Well, what is chemical fertilizer? Well, you could say manufactured fertilizer is bad, but chemical, they're all chemicals. Nitrogen is an element, and it's bound with either hydrogen or oxygen to make ammonium or nitrate nitrogen. So everything we have is chemical. So let's call it chemical fertilizer. It's somebody's idea of how to make something sound bad that really is not bad. What is bad is things that aren't pure in it. So it's got impurities. It can have some heavy metals in it if it's manufactured. So we look at the quality of that manufactured or commercial fertilizer. Okay, we also look at how it is put together. But most of the thing we have to look at more than anything is, are we putting too much on? Those are the kind of things that have more of an effect negatively on soils than anything, is over applying nitrogen, over applying phosphate, over applying potassium. Anything you do, you can over apply. There's a certain balance that soils are seeking, and when we get there, we get our best results from crops and the ability of that soil to produce not only good crops, but good quality, good nutrition dense crops that are healthy to eat and good for you. But we also have other chemical fertilizers out there, if you want to include the soil amendments like gypsum and limestone, and dolomite. These, most people don't have a problem with these because they're what we say are natural. Most of them are ground up raw product. In other words, you have a lime deposit, you dig it out with heavy equipment, you run it through some screens and grind it up so that it's very fine, so it goes to work very fast. Gypsum, again, is usually found in most of what we see today is gypsum is found in deposits that have been put down somewhere. Same with these dolomite, and those of you that aren't familiar, it's a calcium magnesium carbonate, so it's got calcium and magnesium, about 2 parts calcium to 1 part magnesium. That's what dolomite is. But they're chemical too. So when you hear this chemical fertilizer is bad, everything you put on it, whether it be compost is chemically altered because what did it come from? It came from carbon material that gets basically digested by microbial activity. Some of the nutrients in there are also sequestered. So it's phraseology that is made to put a bad connotation to something that is not all bad if you've done the work. Make sure it's a nice, clean, manufactured fertilizer with the right analysis, and that you don't over apply it. The next thing we look at is, we see it all the time, that we use too much pesticide. And that word is a very broad word. Pesticide means something that kills a pest. Fly swatter kills a pest. So would you consider that, pesticide? Or you see a big, beetle crawling across there and you step on it. Does your foot now become a pesticide? It is something that kills a pest. Okay. And so it isn't just necessarily, it's the word that we have gotten to the point that we look at it as bad. It's bad for us, and it isn't what we would like to consume. And we'd like to remove it all from all of our food sources. Now, there's many different forms of what we'll call, industry's been trying to put a kind of a little spin on it, and we'll call it crop protection materials, or crop care products. What they really are is just different ones of different classes, things that we need for fungi, insects, weeds, and those basically all are, you'll say fungicide, meaning kills fungus, insecticide, meaning it kills insects, herbicides means kills weeds. Okay. Then we look at other ones that we use in the organic field, which we use a lot of what we call biopesticides. They don't like to advertise them too much because that takes away a little bit of the glamour of an organic that you would be using a pesticide. But these are naturally occurring biopesticides, and they can be of different strains of microbes. And when I say microbes, they can be mold, yeast, fungi, and they attack something that we are not wanting for our crop. Could be a fungi, could be an insect, and in some cases, but not usually, kill weeds. But most of the time, what we're looking is insects and fungi. And they do it by having these naturally occurring microorganisms can attack fungi and insects and actually do a pretty good job. They aren't long lasting and need to apply often to be effective, but overall, they do a good job. But they are applied often in our organic setting. The other thing we're hearing a lot of course, and it's really big in regenerative ag, is all you need to do is just add more carbon. Get more carbon. Let your soil sequester more carbon. It's going to be good for it, and it's going to do really well. Well, compost is basically a carbon-based product. Your cover crops grow up, and then you till them back, and what's that? More carbon that you're putting back into the soil. But if you don't know what you're trying to do with those, they can be detrimental also. If you have a crop that you're trying to slowly grow something, but you're putting lots of legumes into your cover crop, or there's high nitrogen and low carbon amount in your compost, you can get responses that you're not looking for. You can overgrow because you need to know how much nitrogen a crop needs, how much is in the compost, how much will be released in a year. There's many, many things you need to know about compost before just put it out because it's good for your soil. Got a lot of carbon. It's going to put more carbon into your soil. Most of the carbon that gets into the soil comes from plants' natural ability to extract carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and turn it into sugar or glucose as carbohydrates. And it actually will pump that on down into the roots and restore carbon and give it energy so that we can start the growth of next year's crop or the crop we're working on right now. If you put a lot of legumes in cover crop, you can put in so much more nitrogen than the plant actually needs that you can get some negative effects. You can get higher pressures of pests that deal on things that deal on crops that are very much stressed from having too much nitrogen. They're trying to get rid of it, and this makes them frequent targets for a lot of pests. So we see lots of things and we'd like a lot of them to be true. And they're all usually based in some kind of fact. They have a little bit of truth to them, sometimes more than others, but you have to do a lot of investigation to cut through all of this, the taglines and the gloss and glitter of all the advertisement that they put into it to tell you how good it's going to do and how much better it's going to be. But those print media things, you got to start to ask some questions. Who did the research on it? If you said, I did the research on this, well, it's kind of, you need an independent third party, someone that has no economic stake in the game. They're just growing it out, using your product as you direct them, compare it against a grower standard, what's normally done, and then measure the yield, measure the quality. There's ways to do it, but a lot of those take time and money. So make sure you know what you're buying and buy something from a good, reputable, if you're buying compost, from somebody that uses good stock source. What I mean, compost is what you put into it. If you just drag a bunch of carbon materials together, mix it up, you don't know if you've got the balance that you need. A lot of good compost will be in that, at least 10, but more 12 to 1 to 15 to 1. And that's carbon to nitrogen ratios in those composts. That's what will be the most beneficial. If you get too high, you got too much carbon, and the microbial activity will attack your nitrogen to break down that carbon. So your crop will suffer. Vice versa, if it's too low and there's not enough carbon in it, too much nitrogen, then what you get is it'll attack your soil humus and things that you've tried for years, your stabilizing carbon materials that you've got in there, and it'll actually literally break those down to feed itself. The downside is sometimes in that scenario, you get a tremendous release of nutrients and you get a tremendous crop. But every year after that, you'll get worse and worse because you will continue to break down that soil humus until it's almost all gone. And then that soil does not have that good balance of all those nutrients in a very, very available form. So again, know what you're buying. Be careful of if it's too good to be true. It normally is. And so look at someone that's had success, see what they've done, and then see how similar soil tests are. Because I always come back to that. You've listened to me on these podcasts. You'll know everything always comes back to measuring my soil. What do I have in my soil from a certain lab that gives me the results that I use so that I can trust the numbers and use them repeatedly year in, year out? Then I know, one, if your product worked, I can see it in yield. I can also see it in the benefit of the plant. And over time, we might be able to find it in the soil test too. So always come back to some form of measurement to really find if it really works. So I'm going to stop there on today, but just a little things that you see in literature that you're reading and trying to get better. And it can be very confusing. Hopefully this helped a little bit. Until next time, when we'll take on some of the myths of water that they peddle out there. Thanks, and stay curious.
Thanks for another absolutely fantastic episode of Agriculture in a Nutshell, Bill. I'm sure that everyone very much so loved what you had to say about how it's very important to do your research and not be misled in the ag industry. And for all you listeners, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and always stay curious.